Are ghosts real? Perhaps they are trapped souls that for some reason still walk on the earth. Are they looking for something or someone, or for an answer as to why they have found themselves in this dilemma? Could they have suffered such terrible trauma at the time of their death that they cannot get away? Maybe ghosts are waiting for someone to release them, or perhaps they do not even know that they are dead. These questions have been asked for thousands of years, and to this very day, we still have no definitive answers. In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 scary ghost sightings that cannot be explained. From a ghost testimony that helped to convict a murderer, to a seemingly innocent set of bunk beds possessed by evil spirits. Here are 5 ghost sightings that cannot be explained away. You know the drill. Hit those lights, sit back, and enjoy. Now, before we get started, we'd just like to say a massive thank you to this video's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Chances are you're a fan of top 5s, and you've probably got a knack for late night investigations in all corners of the internet. Whether it's deep dives into the unknowns of the universe, or binging the newest mystery thriller series on your favourite streaming service, you probably spend a good amount of time online. But what if we told you there was a safe way to do so? In addition to an opportunity to access the web from any location in the world, no strings attached. With Surfshark VPN, these incredible possibilities are delivered directly to you in the simplest ways possible, letting you evolve into a top-tier internet sleuth. One of Surfshark's greatest keys is its ability to unlock access to servers from anywhere on Earth, whether it be the United States or even East Asia. Surf the web in any country in any time zone. This means your favourite television shows and digital programming that's only available in certain territories are now available on your own streaming service accounts like Netflix or Amazon Prime. Just switch servers on the VPN to a country of your choice, and entirely new libraries will be at your viewing disposal, on an unlimited number of devices too. There's also an additional level of security as well, so if protecting your data and information is a priority, Surfshark VPN uses industry-leading encryption to secure your data, keeps your browser history confidential, and automatically blocks over 1 million known virus hosting websites and other phishing threats. It may sound too convenient to be true, but we promise that's just the tip of the iceberg. For a limited time, use our code TOP5s upon checkout to unlock a brilliant 83% discount, along with 3 months free and a 30-day money-back guarantee, easily the best price on the VPN market. So what are you waiting for? Grab your magnifying glass, shut those Venetian blinds, and become a better sleuth with Surfshark VPN. The Greenbriar Ghost. In October 1896, Alva Zonahista, who was known as Zona, married her sweetheart, Erasmus Stribing Trout Shoe, in Greenbriar, West Virginia, after just a few short months of meeting. Shoe worked as a blacksmith and was new to the area. This led to opposition to the marriage from Zona's mother, Mary Jane. She didn't want Zona, who was in her early 20s, to marry the much older stranger. And for other unknown reasons, she just didn't like him. In January of 1897, Zona had been a bride for just 3 months when her body was found at the bottom of the stairs by an 11-year-old boy named Andy Jones. He had been sent to the house by Shoe and told to ask Zona if she needed anything from the general store. Young Andy ran straight home to tell his mother what he had seen, before continuing on to the blacksmith shop to inform Shoe. Shoe, who appeared to be in great distress, ran home and summoned the local coroner, Dr. W. Knapp. When he arrived, he found that Shoe had carried his wife upstairs. He had stripped and redressed her in her Sunday best, a dress with a high collar and large bow. Zona's face was covered by a veil. Knapp tried to determine the cause of death, but was hindered by Shoe, who remained by his wife's head, embracing her upper body and weeping uncontrollably. So after a cursory examination, Knapp announced that Zona had died from an everlasting faint, now known as a heart attack. Zona's body was laid out for burial. Neighbours who came to the wake noticed that Shoe was acting very strangely. He had tied a large scarf around Zona's neck, claiming that it had been her favourite, and he wouldn't let anyone near her body. She was taken to her mother's home on Big Sewell Mountain, and buried on the hilltop there in a small cemetery. About a month later, for 4 consecutive nights, Zona's ghost appeared to her mother. She said Shu was abusive and he had broken her neck in a fit of rage because she had not cooked any meat for supper. The ghost turned her head completely around to demonstrate the damage to her neck. Mary Jane demanded an immediate investigation because of Shu's strange behaviour and the untimely circumstances of Zona's death. Prosecutor John Preston agreed to have her body exhumed. The autopsy discovered that Zona had a broken neck. There were finger marks on her throat and the windpipe had been crushed. Shu was arrested and charged with murder, and before his trial, investigations found that he had already served time in a penitentiary for horse theft and had previously been married twice. Both wives had died under suspicious circumstances. One was supposed to have fallen from a haystack and broken her neck. The other had a basket of rocks dropped on her head when Shu was on the roof repairing a chimney. Although Shu protested his innocence, he was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment due to the evidence being purely circumstantial. The people of Greenbriar, unhappy with his sentence, formed a lynching party but failed in their attempt to hang Shu. He was taken to the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville and died there in March of 1900, aged 38. At trial, Mary Jane's testimony concerning the appearance of her daughter's apparition was entered into the record. The Greenbriar Ghost is the only known case in the US in which a ghost's testimony helped to convict a murderer. The Mann Family. During the autumn of 1991, Alan Mann was 19 years old. He lived with his parents in Lake Wales, Florida. One day he returned home from work after the night shift. He was asleep during the afternoon, but was awoken at 3 p.m. to find a woman standing in the doorway of his room. She turned towards the hallway as though she was leaving. Alan got up and walked over to the door, but by the time he got there, the figure had disappeared. He said he looked all over the house for the woman, but could not find her, and all of the doors of the house were locked from the inside. Alan told his mother, Sandra, that he thought that he might have seen a ghost, but she dismissed the idea. Alan eventually married a girl named Linda, and she moved into the Mann family house. One evening, Sandra was sitting on the couch watching TV with her daughter-in-law when she saw the ghost herself. Sandra noticed a white, smoke-like form appear at the end of the couch. Her dog, Princess, who was sitting beside her, also noticed it too, but by the time the dog had jumped down, the apparition had disappeared. Although Linda had not seen anything strange, she was positive that the house was haunted. She enlisted the help of a friend who owned an Ouija board, and together with Alan, they performed a seance. They were awarded the name Kramer, although no one knew anyone by that name. Alan's father David was startled by a strange smell in the middle of the hallway and believed that a little voice inside his head spoke to him, saying, "This is Isabella." On one occasion, Alan said that Linda violently attacked him. It was incredibly uncalled for, and she just snapped. Normally, Linda had a high-pitched giggle, but she started laughing in an evil way. Alan tried to push her away, but it only made Linda more vicious. Alan had to physically slam her against the wall before she would let go of him. Then Linda just gently placed her head on his shoulder and carried on the conversation exactly where she had left off before she had snapped. Afterwards, Linda could not remember what had happened and was upset when Alan told her what she had done. Now recognizing the seriousness of the situation, David went to see a spiritualist. He was told to pour salt all around the house, keep bags of it under their beds, and try an exorcism. But none of this worked. Everyone in the family was suffering from violent headaches, and they began to hear many voices all muttering together. One voice was that of a woman, and it was louder than the rest, but they could not distinguish what any of the voices were saying. A local medium visited the home and was able to name the ghost that lived there as Isabella Kramer. It was a familiar name to the Manns, as they had been aware of it for several weeks. A minister visited the family, and afterwards the phenomena appeared to settle down. Regardless, Sandra and David decided to move, but while they were packing, Linda began to shout and swear angrily at the ghost, causing a light bulb to explode and catch fire. The Center for Paranormal Studies from Silver Springs began an investigation into the activity. One of the 3 team members, Andrew Nichols, described the house as having an extremely oppressive atmosphere. The team soon began to experience headaches, and Nichols said that the old bedroom of Alan and Linda had the most amount of activity. Polaroid photographs were taken, and one showed a vague human shape. Sandra believed that the shape in the photo was Isabella. The image was examined in 1993 at Polaroid headquarters, and it was determined that the shape seen was not due to a defect in the camera or the film. The Black Hope Curse. During the early 1980s, Houston, Texas experienced a huge redevelopment program. There were new citizens arriving at the area who wanted to be close to the hustle and bustle of a lively city, but also wanted to live in a quiet, safe area. So housing subdivisions were constructed in the outlying areas. One of these was built just outside of Houston in Crosby and called the Newport Subdivision. It was an appealing and upmarket development. The brand new homes were stunning, with well-mown lawns, and you would think that it was the picture-perfect place for families to live out their American dream. Sam and Judith Hanley believed just that. So when they moved into the western perimeter of the development in 1982, they thought that it was their dream house, the home that they had always been looking for, and at first they were very happy there. The Haynes decided to put a swimming pool in the backyard, and the construction crew arrived to make preparations. It was then that a strange elderly gentleman turned up on their doorstep. He introduced himself as Jasper Norton, and he said the Haynes needed to know something about the backyard before they put in the pool. Sam followed Mr. Norton around the house, and the old man pointed to an area on the ground and said there were graves there. He showed Sam the exact spot where they were, and advised him not to go through with the plan. Sam wasn't sure what to say. He didn't know whether the man was joking around, but was unsure as to why anyone would find it funny. Norton then explained that he had buried the bodies himself when he was in his teens. He said that the area had once been a cemetery, and most of the interned there were former African American slaves, and it was called Black Hope Cemetery. He said the last burial there was in 1939, and there were at least 60 paupers' graves still there. It seems that the housing developers had just built over the top of the cemetery without moving any of the bodies. Wanting to find out if this was true, Sam and Judith began to dig in the place that Mr. Norton had pointed out. It wasn't long before he hit something hard and made of wood. The couple had uncovered 2 coffins containing human remains. One of the skeletons had 2 wedding rings on the index finger. Judith Haynes was horrified that they had desecrated someone's grave. Sam called in the sheriff, and the county coroner performed an official exhumation. With the help of Mr. Norton and some research into local records, the skeletons were found to belong to 2 former freed slaves who had died in the 1930s. They were called Charles and Betty Thomas. The decision was made to rebury the bodies and let them rest in peace. And that is when the paranormal phenomena began, not just for the Haynes, but for dozens of other families in Newport. It began when Judith noticed that her bedside clock had started to spark and glow even though it was unplugged. On another night, Judith was alone in the house when she heard the sliding door open and a voice ask, "What are you doing?" On inspection, she found the door was locked. In the morning, she was unable to find her shoes, and they'd reappear on top of the graves in the backyard. Ben and Jean Williams were the Haynes' neighbour. They noticed that their garden flowers kept dying, and coffin-shaped sinkholes began to appear in the garden. It didn't matter how many times they were filled in, they would suddenly reappear. The house was plagued with cold spots, whispering voices, shadowy figures, and had a general air of dread throughout. Ben actually saw 2 ghosts in the house one night. He watched them walk down the hallway and to the bedroom. He even passed through one of them in an attempt to protect his wife. Both families sought legal action against the developers for failure to disclose that their houses were built on a graveyard. The Williamses moved back to Montana after their daughter was struck down by a mysterious illness and died. The Haynes had to move away after declaring bankruptcy. The judge ruled that the developer was blameless. Many families in Newport have suffered with poltergeist activity and have seen strange apparitions, yet others have never experienced anything strange. Perhaps one thing is clear: it's probably a good idea to move and re-inter any bodies from grave sites before you start building on the land. Big Moose Lake. Grace May Brown was just 20 years old and worked at a textile factory in Cortland, New York, when she met Chester Gillette. The Gillette skirt factory where Grace worked was owned by Chester's uncle. Chester was well known in the area as a womanizer who considered himself a big shot because he came from a wealthy family. Grace was just a factory girl. Nevertheless, she caught Chester's eye. He was rich, handsome, and heir to the Gillette fortune, so Grace was quite easily swept off her feet. Chester refused to take Grace out in public, but she was so happily in love that she didn't care, and in 1906 she became pregnant with Chester's child. He arranged a romantic break to the Adirondack Mountains. They stayed at the Glenmore Hotel on Big Moose Lake on the way there. Chester rented a canoe for a romantic ride out onto the lake. There he hit Grace over the head with a tennis racket and left her to drown when she fell into the water. He fled the scene but was later caught, tried for her murder and sent to the electric chair. It could be that Grace never left Big Moose Lake though. It is said that she has been seen many times since her murder. Further up the lake, at Covewood Lodge, a misty white apparition is often seen around the property. Sometimes a figure is seen falling through the water before vanishing into the murky depths. Other times just a face is seen creepily floating beneath the surface. Wherever the presence is felt, at Big Moose Lake, there appears to be a veil of overwhelming misery and hopelessness that has left some witnesses with a breathless feeling of abject terror. The Tallman Family. In April of 1986, Deborah and Alan Tallman moved to the small farming town in Hirocon in Wisconsin. The church-going family had 3 children and were looking forward to living their dream home on Larrabee Street. In February of 1987, they bought a used bunk bed from a second-hand store. The bunk beds were assembled and then stored away in the basement. The beds had been purchased for the 2 young daughters, and in May they were moved upstairs. The older boy, Danny, was to sleep next door in the smaller room. That night, Debbie tucked him in and left the clock radio on for him as he fell asleep. Danny got up and told Debbie that the station had changed. Debbie got him back to bed and reset the station, but he quickly got up again and was frightened, saying that the station had changed once again and that he had saw the dial move by itself. It later got to the point where Danny would throw a tantrum at bedtime because he was so afraid to sleep in his room. The Tallmans turned to their pastor for help, and he visited the home, saying that he felt evil in the house and believed that there was a demonic presence. He thought that regularly attending church might help the family. The Tallmans were being terrorized. Doors would slam shut on their own, visitors would see red eyes staring at them, and disembodied voices could be heard all around the house. Just before Christmas, Danny was petrified after seeing another vision. Alan was angry and dared the entity to fight with him instead of frightening little children. 3 weeks later, he returned home at 2 a.m. from a late shift at work. When he got out of the car, he could hear a strange howling noise that was growing louder and louder. He heard a voice call to him from out of the howling. Alan walked around the back of the house to see who was there, but finding no one, he returned to the car and found the garage on fire. Scared, he ran inside to call the fire service, dropping his lunchbox on the way. After going back outside, he saw that the fire had gone out and there was no sign of any damage. It was as though it never happened. Alan went back inside where he locked the door behind him, only to have his lunchbox ripped out of his hand when he reached down for it. It was thrown across the room by some unseen force. Because the children were so scared, Alan began to sleep on the floor of his daughter's bedroom. He was awoken one night to find the room engulfed in a strange mist and a voice threatening him, saying, "You're dead." Alan was so afraid that Debbie had to call the pastor. He arrived to find Alan with pale skin and blue lips, and he was shaking with fear. In January of 1988, a teenage relative stayed over to help Debbie and the children whilst Alan was at work. Whilst he was helping to get the children ready for bed, he began screaming for Debbie. He and the children were hysterical because they'd all seen an apparition in the bedroom. It was the final straw. They got the kids and fled the house for good. 2 weeks later, the Tallmans had the bunk beds destroyed. They moved to another city where they never experienced any other paranormal activity. A new family moved into the house on Larrabee Street, and they too never experienced any strange phenomena. So that's it for this video. We hope you're enjoying the Creepy Marathon month, and there's plenty more to come. We'll see you right back here tomorrow for another horror themed video.